This is the Holden 308 that is going to hopefully end up in my HZ 1-tonner. And this video is the first instalment of its progress. The baseline condition it was in when I got it, the machining that's been done so far, and my plans for continuing the rebuild. Now I'm still working on getting the cab off the tonner's chassis. I have managed to get the doors off and also get all of the mounting bolts out as well. So it's ready to lift. I've just got to figure out exactly how I'm going to lift it off. So I thought it might be good in the meantime to capture the story of the starting point of the rebuild of this 308. This 308 actually came with my husband's Tirana. It came without a carburetor, so we got a quadrijet from a wrecker. He put a gasket kit through it. One of the lifters was gummed up, so he freed that up and we got it running on an engine run stand. But then he decided he wanted to go down the LS route, so rather than wasting a 308, that was actually the trigger for me getting the 1-tonner in the first place. Now it's a red motor, which curiously came to us painted blue, but that means it's pre-pollution, and I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to need to do, particularly to the heads, I guess, for it to pass roadworthy on a 1979 HZ. We'll find out though. Regardless of how that turns out, I'm really just having some fun rebuilding this alongside restoring the tonner. I didn't actually film it, but I did take plenty of photos when I pulled this engine down. And look, it's the first engine I've ever pulled apart completely. It was a lot of fun learning, and I guess a Holden 308, an early one like this, is pretty easy to learn on. So it had on it this quadrijet, which, like I mentioned, has just had a gasket kit put through it. And on the engine run stand, it was running pretty nice. I don't think we ever got it revving high enough to open the secondaries, but I guess because everybody talks negatively about quadrijets because they're fussy or difficult to tune or whatever, it's kind of part of the reason why I'm interested in keeping this and using it. I think it will be fun to learn and really satisfying to get it to work really well. The manifold, the intake manifold that was on the 308 is this Edelbrock Performer. It's pretty grubby, but as far as an intake manifold goes, I think just a bit of a clean-up might be all it needs. I do want the engine bay to look a little bit pretty, so I'll take it to a local machine shop and see what they can do to clean it up. But now the cam that was in it is a Crow cam, very mild street cam, and we'll talk about it a bit more, but I'm keen to go a little bit more aggressive than that. I don't know the specs of this particular cam off the top of my head, but we can look it up in a catalogue. What do we got there? Can you see that? 666. It's not in bad condition, but I think it's really is showing a fair bit of wear around the lobes. Now the rockers are Yellow Terra roller rockers, and I think these will be fine to keep as well. It had a hydraulic flat tappet lifters. As far as the heads go, I don't really know too much about them. One of them, I don't think it was this one, had a crack somewhere along the edge that seemed to be welded up. So before I make any decisions, I'll get these tested and cleaned up, and I also have to figure out whether I can even use them in a pollution car. Now the block itself seemed to be in pretty good condition. You can see that it did have a bit of pitting and rust here and there. You're looking at it right now in its machine state, which I'll talk through in a sec. But when I pulled it down, it had already been bored to 60 thou over, and the crank was already 10 thou under. But in cylinder 4, the piston's wrist pin was completely seized. Well, seized enough that I couldn't move it by hand at all, but it must have given into the crank because everything seemed to be moving and sounding fine when we were running it on the stand. That cylinder had some light score marks and the piston skirt was trashed. But in general, everything else looked pretty good. You know, it's an old engine, so it's a bit worn and tired. But to find out if it really was going to be worth saving, I took it to a local machine shop to have it tested and to decide what to do from there. So as you'd expect, they started it in a hot tank to clean it up, get all the grime off it, and then did some crack testing and sonic testing just to make sure it was solid and had enough meat in the cylinder walls, I guess. Then each of the cylinders got re-sleeved. Now, I don't know, you might just be able to see in some lights a bit of a join there. It's really hard to see unless you're looking at it in the right angle. And the sleeves are back to standard bore for the 308. And really, I think all they had was just some light honing just to clean them up. What's pretty typical, I think, with re-sleeving a block is that the water jackets get a bit of a fill, and typically, I think, grout or cement or something like that's used, but these guys put a resin in instead. You can see that kind of jadey green colour. And it was quarter filled. I think very often they're half filled. I was originally a bit concerned that filling up water jackets like that would mean that the engine would end up running hotter, but a bit of research seems to suggest that they often run cooler. I guess the water's moving through faster and taking heat away faster. But yeah, not a worry. The block was also decked just to clean that surface up a bit, and it got new cam bearings as well. It's just a bit of oil. I've been keeping the block kind of marinating in some Lanox just to avoid any corrosion, and that's been working well so far. Now let's turn this baby over. I love brass Welsh plugs. I didn't ask for them, but coincidentally they put them in for me, which is awesome. Now, we did reuse the conrods. Their weights were checked, they were resized to get everything balanced, and also got new cast flat top pistons fitted as well. Now, the main tunnel was line honed, and the crank got crack tested and linished to clean it up. It's still 10 thou under, so the journals didn't really need anything more than a light clean-up. Now, obviously it's not assembled, and I've got a bunch of bits that will help with that process when the time comes. We have new main bearings, conrod bearings. I've got a Molly ring set, an ARP main stud kit, which you can see is already in the block. Nice. And that is overkill for this engine. I just thought for the extra few dollars, why not? And also a conrod bolt kit as well, which you can see it's already just partially assembled here. Do you want to see these pistons? So yeah, this is probably overkill, and I did spend a pretty penny on it so far, with more to spend as well. But really, it's not just an investment in an engine, it's an investment in fun and learning, and I also tell myself that it's about retaining some of Holden's history too. As far as plans for the rebuild, what I'm aiming for is kind of constrained by the fact that it has been re-sleeved and it's an old block. The machine guy said 400 horsepower is probably as much as I'd want to try and get out of it, and I don't know, I just think for what it is and what I'm going to use it for, 350 horsepower sounds like enough fun. Now, because it's about fun, it needs to have a bit of a lumpy cam, don't you think? Not cantankerous, grumpy, but streetable, because I want to be able to use it as a daily driver. Not that I drive daily, I work from home, so really it's just about making a run down to the local hardware to get some mulch for the garden or that kind of thing, or to get a coffee or meet a friend for lunch. As far as the heads are concerned, I really don't know whether I can use the ones that I've got for the pollution reasons, but also I don't know what condition they're really in, so they'll get tested at least as a starting point. I don't really want to go down the VN head route. I kind of like the idea of keeping this engine as close to original as I can, and for the power it's going to make, it's not going to need bigger valves or anything fancy like that. But the first step will be, I'll get the heads tested to see if they're even worth starting with. As far as valve train, I'm going to get a new cam. I don't know what yet, we'll find out. I'm going to get new lifters and push rods as well. Probably stick with the hydraulic lifter option, and I'll keep these Yellow Terra roller rockers as well. For the intake, like I mentioned, I'm keeping the Quadrajet. I'm going to learn how to, I'll probably rebuild it more thoroughly than my husband did, but also learn how to tune it as well. And for the Performer, I'm going to just really get that cleaned up and use it, and I don't know, maybe I'll move on to something else in the future, I just don't know yet, but that Performer will be absolutely fine just for getting it running. For the exhaust, it's got to sound good, but it also has to suit the engine as well, so I don't really know what that's going to be yet. So when the 308 is finally plonked into the one-tonner's engine bay, the look I'm going for is more restoration than modern. And that means that the block will be painted red again, and the air cleaner will probably look pretty original. It might even have 308 written on it. But I do want to tidy it up. It'll be nice and clean, and the wiring I hope I can tidy up, and the plug wires will run nice and neatly. And I think I'd like to get some finned alloy valve covers, and we'll see what else. So yeah, there's still a bit more to figure out. If you've got any ideas or suggestions for this 308, I'd be happy to hear about them. But in the meantime, I'm going to turn my attention back to lifting off the tonner's cab.